what is panzanella? Well, panzanella is an Italian bread salad. I guess that's the best way to describe it. Usually it's made with bread, tomatoes, some seasoning, olive oil. We're gonna change it up a bit for this Thanksgiving side dish. Now, this is perfect for someone who doesn't like the traditional sort of stuffing or dressing, whether you make it in the oven or in the bird. This is a cool side dish. And it is really kind of like a salad, but with more substance because of the bread. And of course, this isn't just for Thanksgiving. You could use it at Christmas, New Year's, Arbor Day, any day you want. It's a great side dish year-round. So first we got to get our bread ready, and part of that is breaking down these two. Well, this is a half loaf of Bavarian rye, and this is a loaf of sourdough. And I want to break these down into cubes and get them in the oven so they toast up a bit. So let's just start with our Bavarian rye first. And I want something, maybe 3/4 of an inch cubes, but it doesn't have to be exact. And this recipe is perfect for bread that's just about to go stale. And this bread right here fits that bill perfectly. Both of these loaves. This one's a little too short, so we'll cut that in a second. And here I'm just gonna break these down. If you get a little crumbly, that's all right. And we're just gonna take these, break these into pieces. It's like I said, about maybe 3/4 of an inch thick. The bigger size like this, the square size, doesn't really matter. You could even tear these. You don't have to cut them. In fact, let's just tear these. That'll be easier for these. This Bavarian rye is pretty soft inside, so we don't really need the knife. Basically, you're tearing it into kind of bite-sized pieces. And some panzanella recipes call for just leaving the bread like this and adding the dressing and the other ingredients, but I like to toast it because it gives it a little more structure. It's less likely to turn into sort of like a bread pudding then. Sort of that really just absorbent texture where everything gets sucked up. Want it to have a little bit more of that structure. I'm gonna start throwing these pieces on a sheet pan here. Don't let anybody escape. Let's get this piece. And you can play around with the ingredients here. You can use different kinds of bread, any bread you want. I just happen to have this loaf of sourdough that was frozen, so I thawed it out last night, and I had this Bavarian rye, which if I didn't eat it the next day or two, was gonna, start to get a little too stale, so it's perfect use for it. We're gonna call this our rye tray for all the Bavarian rye. Get those spread out. And we'll just sweep these crumbs to the side. They're not gonna hurt anything while we're doing our sourdough. Let's cut our sourdough here. One of the reasons I wanted to use two different kinds of bread was the contrasting colors here. You have that dark sort of Bavarian rye and this very, very light white sourdough. It's a very flaky outer crust. And yeah, I said this loaf was frozen. I will do that if I've got a loaf of something that I'm just not gonna be able to use, but I think I might use it later. Freezing a loaf of bread is perfect. You thaw it out, the next day you use it. And the same thing here, just break these into the sort of the bite-sized pieces that you want. See how that outer crust tastes. This is also a great side dish for hot summer days because you don't have to cook anything. I mean, well, you do have to cook the bread. You're just kind of toasting it up, but that's not that big a deal. And you could do that the day before. In fact, the same thing here with this. If you're doing this on Thanksgiving, you could toast this bread up the day before. No problem. Remember, nothing here has to be perfectly uniform. This isn't a beauty contest. This is about taste and ease of preparation. If you're a person who doesn't like crust, you can take the crust off, but that makes it a little more labor intensive here. With the crust on, it's just so easy. We'll pop these pieces on what we'll call our sourdough tray. So I've got my two trays here now, Bavarian rye, sourdough. My oven is preheated to 300 degrees, and I'm gonna let these go for about, 20 to 30 minutes just to toast up a little bit. I'll bring you back when they're done. So our bread went about 25 minutes, and here it is. It's nice and toasty, not toasty brown, but it has that outer crust on it now. Let me see if we can hear this. Just gives it a little more structure. Same thing with the Bavarian rye. Let's listen. It's going to stand up to the little bit of dressing and a little bit more of the moisture from the artichoke hearts that are going to be mixed into this panzanella. So now I'm going to set these aside and let these cool for about half an hour, and then we'll get to making the rest of our ingredients. So our bread pieces are cooling down. I put them in a large steel bowl. They're finishing up there, and now it's time to get the rest of our ingredients ready. First, we're gonna get some red onions sliced up. So I have a small red onion here that I've peeled and cut in half, and I just want to get slices. These are gonna be sort of these half moon slices. Kind of thin. And I did go ahead and take that center core out so we don't have that in there. You can see on this one it's removed. And these can be as thin or as thick as you want. It's like that, and go ahead and break them up while they're here on the cutting board. It makes it easier when you start mixing them. At least get the majority of them separated. Some will stick together, but they'll eventually come apart. Go ahead and clear these out of here. We've got about a cup of parsley here. Just want to give this a nice chop. It doesn't have to be diced up really fine. Just want to break these larger leaves down. And I tried to remove as much of the stem as possible, but there is still a few little stems in there. This is a curly parsley. At least that's what it's labeled in the store. Just about like that, nothing too fine. Now I've got some marinated artichoke hearts. I had 2 jars, a total of about 30 ounces. And from that marinade, which is sort of an olive oil marinade, I reserved half a cup, and you'll see that in a minute. But the rest of these were just drained lightly, and now I just want to split them. These are about halves. I want to turn them into quarters. Put my plastic cutting board here so the wood cutting board doesn't get too messy. Let's get this done. Just taking these, turning the halves into quarters. If a little bit of them comes apart, no big deal. If you prefer them to be full halves, go ahead and leave them that way. It's not going to hurt anything. If any of them are already quarters, just go ahead and leave those and cut the halves. Our artichoke heart pieces are ready now. Let's make a quick dressing. So in this little plastic container here that I saved from, I think it was a gelato. I love saving these things because they're great for mixing dressings. And that's what I have in here. I have that half cup of reserved marinade, that olive oil and herb marinade. And to this, I'm gonna add a 1/4 cup of red wine vinegar. Put the lid on and shake. Dressing, all done. Let's go ahead and build this panzanella. So here's our bowl of bread pieces, and we're just gonna start adding the rest of our ingredients. First, the red onion. That in there. Then our parsley. I'm also gonna add a half cup of Parmesan cheese. This is a shaved Parmesan. You could use shredded, any kind you like. Now our artichoke hearts. I wanna give this a mix before we add our final ingredients. Just to get this distributed. You can hear the crunchiness of that bread. And it will soften a bit as the moisture from the artichoke hearts and the dressing soaks in a little bit. Now let's get our dressing on here. Distribute it around. Give another mix. Now I'm really gonna get down here and mix with my hands. I wanna make sure that bottom gets turned to the top. That's looking good. Let's get this plated up and get our final ingredients on. And of course, if anybody escapes, get them back on the platter. Nobody's getting out of this meal here. Now I want to dress this with some goat cheese and some of that fresh parsley on top. If you don't like goat cheese, you could use feta, you could use anything you want, but I'm using goat cheese. So I just want to get some of these nice goat cheese crumbles on here. You could use an herbed goat cheese if you want. This is just a nice creamy goat cheese right here. Try and get a good distribution on here. And I like doing the goat cheese on top right about the time you're gonna serve it, because then it doesn't get sort of mushed in there with the rest of the salad. It actually has a goat cheese look to it. And some of our fresh parsley sprigs here. These are ones we didn't chop up, so save a few. And there we go. Artichoke panzanella with goat cheese, red onions, some parsley, Parmesan cheese. Super easy to make. I think it's time to dive in and take a taste. So I gave myself a good little portion here. Let's dive in and have a taste. Get some artichoke heart, some of the Bavarian rye, some cheese, get some red onion. This is gonna be good. That is so good. It's kind of like pasta salad, but with bread instead of the pasta. Oh. Now I like this with a little more structure, with that bread a little stiffer. If you want this to have a little bit softer texture, kind of double the dressing recipe and let it soak in a bit. That will make the bread softer, but I really like this crunchiness. Again, this is done as a Thanksgiving or a holiday dish this year, but really, this is year-round. It's just a fantastic, cool side dish. It's sure to please.